I rise on behalf of New Zealand First to speak to the Land Transport Drug Driving Amendment Bill. And I just want to follow my colleagues from, mostly from the Transport and Infrastructure Select Committee, and say thank you to them and to the other members who doubtless will speak shortly for the hard work they put together, the collegial work they did to bring this bill to where it is, and to recommend a number of amendments to the House, many of which are part of this bill. Mr Speaker, this bill is about road safety. We've already had Tanya Utikere talk about road safety in a broader context, and road safety best practice usually would say that's about safer roads and roadsides, about safer speeds, about safer vehicles, and about safer road users. And this bill is about the safer road users part of that, because, Mr Speaker, drug driving, we know, is a major problem on our roads. We had 289 people who tragically lost their lives last calendar year on the roads. That is the first time below 300 since 2014, and actually, according to the AA, is the lowest per capita rate of death since the 1920s. But it is still 289 people who died on our roads, and that is 289 too many. Mr Speaker, of those, 64 had drugs in their system, and a further 32 had drugs and alcohol in their system. So there is no doubt that drugs are playing a significant role in road death and injury, and that is why this bill is here. Mr Speaker, this bill aims to have put in place a drug testing regime, and the whole purpose of that is not so much to catch people, but is to discourage people from consuming drugs, being under the influence of drugs, and then driving, and then potentially causing death or injury to themselves or to other people. As we've already heard, the previous Labor government did see this as a problem and had a crack at fixing it, and the intention was good. The problem was that the regime was put in place, the technology just simply doesn't exist to be able to do the testing at roadside and be able to determine someone effectively guilty at roadside because the technology is not there. So what this regime does is, instead of doing that, it says we do a screening test at roadside, and then we do a laboratory test to say we're going to fine you, and that laboratory test is recognised as being much more robust. So the advice we had from the experts was that they couldn't stand behind the accuracy of the roadside test, the oral fluid test. It's pretty good, but it's not perfect. And there's always that issue of saying whether you like the numbers or not, but it is better that 100 guilty people go free than that one innocent person is convicted. And so I guess that is what that thinking is about. But what they did say is that they would stand behind the lab test as being just as good and just as accurate as the blood test, which we already are familiar with. So this regime puts in place that two-stage mechanism. The bill's based in theory on random, but random, as you've heard my colleague Cam Luxton say, is a bit targeted. It's targeted to places where, while it is in theory, it's anyone, anywhere, anytime, that's true, but it is likely to be operationally targeted, and part of that is because the number of drug tests is going to be very, very much less than the number of alcohol tests that are done at the moment, but it is still intended as a deterrent. And look, that does take me to the one issue which did exercise the Select Committee and also, as we've already heard, the Attorney General, and that is, in the first instance, before somebody's been tested, they've not been found guilty, there's no behaviour, there's no evidence of drug taking at this stage, maybe later on after they've been tested, but before they've been tested, what rights do they have? Now, the Attorney General said, you're stopping somebody, you're detaining them for a short period of time, or for a period of time, you are taking a saliva test, so there's some level of intrusion, and so the Attorney General and quite a number of the submitters expressed concern about that, and the Select Committee spent some time thinking about that. And so look, I just wanted to put on record that this was a concern that we raised. There was exploration of whether we should suggest a time limit by which the testing should be done, and look, I understand why there isn't one that the Minister has taken up, and part of that is because while Tanya Utikere said don't want to be led by the technology which is available, the reality is until we've got technology, we don't know whether it's a 10-minute process, a 15-minute process, a 20-minute process, and allowing for some time left over to make sure you do that process properly. So I understand that, and any time that we put in there at this stage would have been a bit random. But we were concerned, and I did want to put this on the record, we were concerned about the potential length of detention. We were concerned also about the, the 12-hour stand down, which occurs if you've been tested at the roadside. You're still going to get that tested positive from the roadside. You're still going to get that 12-hour stand down, even if the lab test says no, you're actually in the clear. So there's an issue there, but it is an issue about road safety, and so we thought that took primacy over the inconvenience of that 12-hour stand down. There were concerns expressed about prescription medicines, but I think the answer to that really is to say, well, look, if you've taken a prescription medicine, most of those things say, give yourself a reasonable length of time before you actually drive after using a prescription medicine. And the other one, as Cam Luxton also said, is the issue around accompanying a police officer. And what we really anticipated there was if you pulled over on the side of the road, the police officer might say to you, look, we want you to move to a safer place, so you're not on the road itself, you move off the road, rather than taking you 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or whatever it might be to a police station, particularly in the rural areas. So look, we were concerned about the power of the state, I guess, and the Attorney General said that as well. We want to make sure that's exercised properly. One of the things we did do, Mr Speaker, was to say that we wanted to make the process more flexible, so we allowed the police to flip between the oral fluid testing and the existing good cause to suspect regime. But really where I wanted to finish off with was to say, despite all of those concerns, which we want to put on record, those things I think can be dealt with by a process which is in the legislation of monitoring, of reviewing, and then potentially of changing as a result of those things. And I think, to put on record, these are the things which we think that the executive of the government should be paying attention to, and with that I think it will be a good regime, it will be a step forward for road safety, and the monitoring regime hopefully will provide, or we expect will provide, the protections for civil liberties and for our people. I commend this bill to the House.
Yeah, I'm just checking all of my drugs to see if he's actually correct when it's got advice on the packet on when to take the drug. I'm not seeing it. I'm looking at my Ritalin right now. It's not there. I'm looking at my other medications for pain. It's not there. it is not on all packets of medication, so I don't know what he's talking about.
Unless it's going to be a new advisory thing to happen when from a certain point forward.
Yeah, I mean, that's not... Look, some medications you take as required, you take as necessary, you take when symptoms flare up. And sometimes that's when you just about before you got to drive to work. So, yeah, I'm sorry, you can't just like go, oh, yeah, I'm going to take this medication, before I jump in the car. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes you got to take the medication while you're driving. So
now, the part I want to find out is the 12-hour detainment of not being able to drive. So I recently, on Friday morning, left at 5 a.m. in the morning, dosed up on coffee. Both Nick and I had a nice plunge of coffee at Joanne's before we left. And what happens if, now let's say it's not coffee, let's say it's something else. But what happens if, say, I'm driving from Tauranga to Wellington and I have a drug test that sits there and does that? Would, say, Nick be allowed to drive my car to Wellington? He does not have a full driver's license. Would that be allowed for me to be in the vehicle in a supervisory capacity?
Depends what he's
taking. Because under drink driving rules, the supervisor of a restricted license driver or a learner's license driver cannot be intoxicated or be potentially removed from driving. So I wonder if that potentially would, that situation, say we get stuck on the desert road, I get flagged for 12 hours, is Nick allowed to drive my vehicle back to Wellington so that the vehicle and I and Nick get back there safely, or are we stranded on the side of the road for 12 hours?
That's a good question.
Yeah, because that's something else in there, what would happen in that situation? Because, being stranded on the side of the road for something that you may ultimately either come back negative at a lab test, or as could be in a situation of a potential, a false positive or something like that, or something that's just over or just under the line. It is where do you draw the line? I do know for drink driving, they have managed to put in place a standard where you can, it's the 250 to 400 section. And if you have a breath test that is more than 250 but less than 400 micrograms for the breath, or for those who are probably thinking of of the percentages, it might be 0.25 instead of 0.4. You would receive an on-the-spot fine and 50 demerit points. And I wonder, and yes, you'll be. I don't know about being forbidden to drive on the spot. That's a thing I'm unsure on. But what is the regime of when that potential situation does occur? Because there isn't at the moment a correlation between, between impairment and blood results and breath screening.
I mean, the police just might tell you to go ring up AA or whatever, or get a taxi or an Uber.
Well, I don't think Uber's a facility that's available on the desert road, but
no.
And I doubt that the cop would sit there and drive your car all the way back to Wellington.
I mean, are they going to tow your car? What's going to happen? Yeah, I don't know.
I've seen on the cop shows, one time they took a bunch of passengers. The person got in a grey area of the law for breath testing, had to be taken to the police station, and because it was a dual cop, but because the car couldn't be left stranded on the road, the other cop drove the car to the police station with the passengers in it, and then at the end of it, the person passed the breath test on the proper machines and was free to go. And thank goodness his car was outside the police station. But is every scenario going to be like that?
How do you do that with a police shortage? Who's going to drive your car?
And how many of them in my case know how to drive manual?
Yeah, I mean, it's like
cars for the last 30 years have been automatics.
Most cops that I know of, it can drive a manual. I think that is a requirement to being a police officer. But yeah,
yeah,
it's like
and it will be the type of vehicle as well. Because I do know at Levin Police Station there were a couple of them that were manuals, but the ones that were manuals were also the ones that were diesel, and they were the 4-wheel drive sort of things. They're the ones that came out when you ended up in a gnarly place you didn't want to be, or where the police got asked to take over the transport of an incident because an ambulance couldn't get down there or something like that. You know, those sorts of things there. And I mean, Ekatahuna's probably got the same thing where the local cop car, it might not be now, but it was probably at one stage a Holden Ute.
So I've just checked on Google. You don't specifically need to be able to drive a manual to become a police officer in New Zealand. You do need to hold a full driver's license. So it's like, yeah, I can see your point. What happens if you've got a cop on your hands that doesn't know how to operate a manual? That's going to suck.
Well, I'll probably say it'll be a city problem.
Yeah, so call the council.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to our Facebook.